Hello and welcome to Stearns Weaver Miller's special program, Breaking Through the Noise. It's all about shining a light on the most important labor and employment issues that employers across Florida and the country are facing right now. I'm your host, Lori Jennings, and we're so glad you're joining us. As you know, for the last 30 years, the law firm of Stearns Weaver Miller has put on a live, all-day conference attended by hundreds of people just like you, the top human resources leaders across Florida. Well, unfortunately, due to COVID, the seminar had to be canceled yet again this year. However, because businesses are quickly reopening their doors, Stearns Weaver Miller wanted to help you break through the noise by addressing employment issues that you'll need to know about in this post-pandemic business environment. You may know Bob Turk. He is chair of the firm's Labor and Employment Department. And Bob is the one who came up with this very creative idea to reach out to everyone by video. So who better to kick off all the action? I'm going to call you Mr. Producer from now on. The pandemic has really put HR professionals like you in the hot seat with some of the most critical, intense, and rapidly changing workplace issues you've ever experienced. And HR folks have taken on more roles than you've ever imagined. So throughout this program, you're going to meet 6 professionals from vastly different businesses across Florida who'll share what kept them up at night during the pandemic. You'll hear from EEOC Commissioner Keith Sonderling. We'll also have discussions on social justice and diversity issues, hot topics in litigation, the upcoming hurricane season, the confusion in applying for leave under the FMLA and ADA, and employee benefit issues. We'll also chat with 5 attorneys in their 30s about where they see future employment law issues heading. The U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission is responsible for enforcing federal laws that make it illegal to discriminate against a job applicant or an employee because of certain protected characteristics. Keith Sonderling is one of 5 commissioners in Washington, D.C. with the EEOC. He participates in the development and approval of commission policies, issues discrimination charges where appropriate, and authorizes the filing of suits. Prior to his confirmation last year, Commissioner Sonderling served as the acting and deputy administrator of the Wage and Hour Division at the U.S. Department of Labor. In our first segment, shareholders Bob Turk and Ingrid Ponce caught up with Commissioner Sonderling about various post-pandemic issues from the EEOC's perspective.
It's really an honor to be a part of your presentation.
COVID-19 brought unprecedented challenges for businesses, leaving many leaders and HR professionals overwhelmed and really unclear how to move forward on various issues. Now, over a year later, there are still unanswered questions. So Stearns Weaver Miller asked their clients, what keeps you up at night? Throughout the show, we are going to be highlighting answers to this question from clients across the state. Our first What Keeps You Up at Night segment features shareholder Rene Ruiz, who focuses his practice on labor relations. Rene checked in with Johnny Telechea Jr. He's the senior HR manager for Florida Crystals Corporation. Florida Crystals is a fully integrated cane sugar company headquartered in West Palm Beach. The company farms 190,000 acres in South Florida and owns 2 sugar mills, a sugar refinery, a packaging and distribution center, a rice mill, and the largest biomass renewable power plant in North America. Let's see what keeps Johnny up at night.
Johnny, good morning. How you been?
Doing okay, Renee. Good to see you.
Life has certainly been different the last year.
Long haulers are individuals who have not fully recovered from COVID-19, weeks or even months after first experiencing symptoms. Some long haulers, as you know, have continuous symptoms, while others feel better for a while, and then they relapse with old or new symptoms. If you have an employee who is a long hauler, they may be eligible for FMLA as well as an accommodation under the ADA. Many situations may not be straightforward, and they're going to require careful consideration of various factors. My good friend, shareholder Lisa Berg, has significant expertise advising clients on this complex issue and is here to help us understand the scope of the law and illustrate how to apply coverage.
Thanks, Lori. Today I want to talk to you about long COVID.
Our next What Keeps You Up at Night segment features shareholder Ingrid Ponce, who spoke with Ashwin Krishnan, Vice President and General Counsel for the Miami Marlins Major League Baseball team. Ingrid met up with Ashwin at where else but the ballpark.
You know, at that time, we didn't really know the nature or the duration of this pandemic.
It's time for a litigation chat with shareholders Andy Rodman, Eric Gabriel, and Eric Roth. They will be discussing hot-button trends in the employment life cycle. During the recruitment and hiring process, a prevailing trend has been embracing the expansion of diversity and inclusion efforts. We have an entire segment later on in the show that does a deep dive into this important issue. However, for this segment, we wanted to focus specifically on approaches to increase diversity and inclusion during the pre-employment stage. One of those methods is banning the box. This idea has been getting a lot of recent attention as a controversial social justice issue. Advocates of the campaign believe that removing conviction and arrest history questions from job applications and delaying background checks until later in the hiring process provides applicants a more fair chance at employment. Andy, start us off. Give us a sense of where we are in the litigation in this area.
Thanks, Laurie. As you noted, more and more companies are embracing diversity and inclusion as critical components of their operations. We've seen, particularly over the last year with the social justice efforts and unfortunately with the death of George Floyd, it has really raised this issue to the forefront.
Can employers voluntarily adopt a ban the box policy?
Absolutely, and that's what many employers are doing.
Does the EEOC regulate in this area?
The EEOC has had a lot to say about this, not surprisingly.
So much insight on this. Andy, thank you.
Well, thank you.
This is a big, big new topic. And we're moving on now to onboarding. A prevalent issue during this stage is the protection of employer intellectual property. And this issue has become even more important in the current work from home environment. Eric Gabriel, can you please elaborate on this?
Sure, Lori. Most employers take the steps they need to protect their physical premises or their information technology systems, but not every employer always is aware of what they need to do and what they should do to protect the investment they make in their workforce and in the information and relationships and training that their workforce receives and can develop.
And then that segues us into the final stage, the departure stage, enforcing restrictive covenant agreements. And Eric Roth, can you talk with us a little bit about what to consider when an employee leaves or when you want to hire someone who's bound by a non-compete or a non-solicitation agreement?
Absolutely. Thank you, lawyer. So non-compete agreements are a little different than the normal contract where you sign an agreement, both parties sign, and if somebody breaches, you just figure you go to court and it's going to be enforced. In Florida and in most states, a non-compete agreement or non-solicitation restrictive covenant agreements are only enforceable if and to the extent they're reasonably necessary to protect the former employer's legitimate business interests.
And that's one area that hasn't changed post-pandemic.
Correct. There's still a lot of litigation going on. People are changing jobs, and it's important to be mindful of this topic.
Well, you are the top in your field with this litigation in every level of employment and the employment process. We thank you for this litigation chat, gentlemen. Andy, Eric, and Eric, and we will continue. In our third What Keeps You Up at Night, shareholder Janet McHenry speaks with Qualenta Kivett, Executive Vice President and Chief People and Talent Officer at Tampa General Hospital. With more than 8,000 team members, the hospital system is one of the region's largest employers. Janet's been working with Tampa General for 27 years and recently assisted Stearns Weaver Miller in establishing a dedicated annual nursing scholarship. And working in a hospital, I'm sure there are so many obstacles that Qualenta had to overcome this year. Let's hear from her firsthand.
What people don't realize is that there is every skill set that you need it can be found in a hospital.
Over the last 14 months, the pandemic forced employers to play catch up in a rush to implement the never-ending laws and guidance that federal agencies issued covering employees, payroll taxes, and benefits. During this time, the U.S. Department of Labor also released several key pieces of important non-COVID-19 related guidance. Employers now need to focus on compliance with these new directives, including the DOL hot topics of cybersecurity for employee benefit plans and handling missing participants, which we'll cover today. Shareholders Sharon Quinn Dixon and Andy McLaughlin are here to discuss these topics and much more. Both Sharon and Andy have their LLM in taxation, and Sharon is board certified by the Florida Bar in tax law, recognizing her as an expert in the field. Sharon and Andy, take it away.
So a good starting point is cybersecurity. We've seen some recent guidance from the DOL on this area.
In our next What Keeps You Up at Night, shareholder Bob Turk talks with Annie Borges, the Director of Human Resources for Fisher Island Club, a private, membership-only club with a private beach, luxury hotel, golf course, tennis courts, a variety of casual and formal dining venues, full-service spa, salon, fitness center, so much more. Fisher Island Club has a year-round staff of more than 400 employees and additional employees during the winter season. Well, Bob had the really tough job. He got to meet up with Annie on beautiful Fisher Island.
Well, hi, Annie.
Hi, Bob.
Thanks for joining me today.
Of course, a pleasure.
Social justice and diversity issues have been brought to the forefront this year, and many employers are grappling with what they can do to make the workplace, the community, and the world a better place. I'm here with attorneys Jean Stearns and Janaea Reed to discuss what their law firm has done in this area and what businesses should be thinking about regarding their diversity and social justice initiatives. Jean is a founding shareholder and current chairman of Stearns Weaver Miller's board of directors. He also heads the firm's litigation department. After serving in a number of governmental advisory roles early in his career, Jean has remained actively involved in a host of public policy issues on both the state and federal level. Janaea is also a seasoned litigator and shareholder of the firm. She has extensive experience representing clients in high-stakes litigation at the trial and appellate levels. Janaea currently chairs the firm's diversity committee, and she's also one of 6 members of a leadership council for a new Black Lawyers Forum established by Meritas, which is a global alliance of market-leading law firms, including Stearns Weaver Miller. We all know after the death of George Floyd, employers are really looking to the issues of diversity and inclusion more than ever. What are some of the ways, Janaea, that companies can facilitate these conversations?
So I think really, Lori, one of the most important things is intentionality and making sure that these conversations aren't just happening, spontaneously, that we're actually creating active spaces for these conversations to happen. So one of the things that we've been focused on doing is really making sure that there's spaces for people to have their voices heard, and also really acknowledging the discomfort. I think that this topic has really been taboo for a long time.
Jean, that takes leadership. It really does. It just isn't willy-nilly, like you say, and you don't want it to be uncomfortable. How do leadership and organizational culture of an employer, how does that play into this?
Well, obviously leadership plays a critical role. Janaea, for example, has a leadership role in our firm. Many others who in our firm have extraordinarily diverse backgrounds. The idea is that if you can surround yourself with people who have different life experiences than you have, if you listen to what they have to say, and as Janaea says, create spaces and opportunities for people to be able to speak, to compel other people to listen, then it creates an environment that I think works for us to better understand each other. What Janaea has taught all of us and what her committee has taught all of us and what we have learned from the spaces she has created is that affirmatively addressing issues is far more important than thinking you don't need to, because we're good people. We're not good enough, and that's the fact, is that you have to affirmatively go do something more than just think, it's not my problem, I'm an okay person. And that's something I think we've learned through this process. And I would hesitate to say it's a result of leadership. I think it's more a function of people willing to listen when people want to be heard. And what George Floyd has done is compelled a lot of people to talk who didn't before. And now the question is leadership willing to listen? And our firm people are willing to listen. And I think that's really probably an important part of the difference.
You can see it in the attorneys that are gathered in this special today. You really can. A beautiful diversity and a willingness to listen and talk. What initiatives have your firm specifically put in place now, Janaea?
So one of the things that we started initially with was to have, small focus groups. So the YWCA has a 21-day challenge, and we put together a small group within the firm to participate in that challenge. And I think one of the things that we were able to do with that is to, by starting small, we picked people who had been at the firm for a long time, really know our culture, really know all of the things that are important to us. And then we can kind of take those things and tailor them to our organization and the things that we want to do in terms of creating space for the conversations. So that's what we really did, and that launched the Equity and Justice Project that we have at Stearns Weaver Miller, where we're focused on education, We have weekly emails about topics on diversity, equity, inclusion. We also have Friday forums where we talk openly about the different things that are going on in the country, what's led to them, all of those kinds of things, and having those conversations and being able to openly talk about them without fear of saying something wrong. I think that's really what we've been focused on, trying to make sure that no one feels like they can say something wrong. We're all learning and growing together.
And how do you feel about all this?
Well, I think it's honestly, I have mixed feelings. First of all, I'm terrific that we're doing it. I'm proud of what we're doing. But at the same time, I'm sad that we have to. I am never comfortable being surrounded by people just like me. I've always in my lifetime been comfortable with people who aren't like me. And to me, the greatness of America has been what its promise is the diversity that is offered in this community.
How do you take this to your clients now, the employers?
Well, our clients, we represent very good people, honestly. We represent employers, for the most part, who I'm proud to represent, who are as concerned about the problem as we are. So we have not seen the slightest impediment in this work in dealing with our client base.
And Janelle, what do you think are the key takeaways now that you can share with everyone listening?
Sure. So I think that, Jean has been modest about the impact of leadership, but it really does start at the top. It's important to have leadership that is committed to the issues of diversity and inclusion and creating a workplace where everyone is included and feels welcome. Another thing that I would say is really know your organization. So for us, as I talked about with the Equity and Justice Project, we really knew what, how we interact. We enjoy talking over breakfast. We enjoy talking over lunch. So we felt comfortable coming into the spaces that we've created to have conversations and to really feel comfortable talking with one another. So you really have to know your organization and start where you are. The other thing that I would say is really just also making sure that everyone understands that this is collective work. So it's not just the diversity committee. It's not just, the people that we've assembled. It's collective work. We're all learning together.
Very key. You don't want this to be just one little committee or a chore for anybody. You want it to be the culture.
It's a life's work, and it always needs to be a life's work. And frankly, we learn more about ourselves. It's not just helping other people. The reality is when you do something that is important to do that you didn't know was important, you're growing yourself. And that's what I think we've been able to achieve. And frankly, I think most of our clients feel the same way. I don't know about you, Janaea, but I think our client group is 100% supportive of what we do.
Absolutely. We have wonderful clients. And, I think they really look to us from a leadership perspective of expecting that we are going to take a leadership role in the community and really embracing that.
And what can I learn from everyone around me?
The truth is, you gain so much when you're doing the kinds of things that we're engaged in this community and in all the communities in which our offices are located. It's really an exceptional group of people.
Well, you have been huge role models for diversity and inclusion, and you are leading the way, and it means a lot for your employees and your clients.
Thank you, Laurie.
Jean Stearns, Janaea Reed, thanks for all you do. If you love gorgeous cars, you're going to love this next segment. Shareholder Lisa Berg speaks with Mia Martin, Assistant General Counsel and Director of HR for Braman Management Association, in our fifth What Keeps You Up at Night chat. Lisa has been working with Braman for 18 years. Family owned and operated for over 40 years. The Braman auto dealerships, including Rolls-Royce, BMW, and Hyundai, have some of the largest luxury showrooms in Florida. Let's see what drives Mia.
How has the pandemic affected Braman?
So most people may not realize this, but as an auto dealership, we were deemed an essential business under the local executive orders. And that means that we were open the entire pandemic.
2021 has been flying by. It's hard to believe that as of June 1st, it is hurricane season once again. Let's hear from one of my longtime friends, Brian Norcross, hurricane specialist at WPLG Channel 10 in Miami, and he is the author of My Hurricane Andrew story, the story behind the preparation, the terror, the resilience, and the renowned TV coverage of the great hurricane of 1992. Brian, how's this year's hurricane season looking?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me here today, and thanks to Lori for calling me up to talk about hurricane season 2021. and hurricanes in Florida in general.
Thank you, Brian. And you heard it right here. With forecasters predicting an above-average season, it's important for employers to do some pre-storm planning and to understand their legal obligations, including when they need to pay their employees. I'm joined now by shareholder Glenn Ristman with important issues to consider now through November 30th when this hurricane season comes to a close.
Thank you, Lori. Now that Brian has shared his thoughts on this year's hurricane season, I'd like to share my top 5 tips for employers to consider in the event of a hurricane or other workplace emergency.
In our final What Keeps You Up at Night segment, shareholder Andy Rodman speaks with Paula Allen, Vice President of Human Resources for First Service Residential Florida, the leading provider of residential property management services in all of North America. The company manages a wide range of residential properties, including large-scale master plan communities, luxury high-rises, single-family homeowners associations, and active adult communities. While she's helping to keep residents sleeping soundly, let's see what keeps Paula tossing and turning.
My biggest fear in the very beginning was keeping those 7,000 associates safe as they were doing their jobs because, as you know, Andy, we're an essential business. And so they went to work every day taking care of our residents and our properties.
Throughout the program, we've been hearing from veteran Stearns Weaver Miller attorneys. We thought it would be good to hear from some of the newer attorneys as they may have a different and fresh view of the current business and legal landscape. I'm joined by 5 attorneys in their 30s to get their thoughts.
I'm sorry, Lori, I'm not 30.
Oh, I stand corrected. You're a youngin'. Okay, near 30? Close
Let's
enough.
say that.
Okay. 5 attorneys approaching or in their 30s. And now to be clear, just because they're younger doesn't mean they're inexperienced or uninformed. Of course not. In fact, these attorneys are frequent writers and speakers on all sorts of labor and employment topics. Very impressive. And they are leaders in various professional and community organizations. So looking into your crystal ball, what do you see for Florida's workplace looking into the near future?
Well, hopefully we're still all above water.
Yes.
Well,
let's hope.
Thankfully, for the time being, we are above water and we're surrounded by beautiful beaches and great weather, which has always attracted people to Florida. I think that with the growth of remote work, which really took off during COVID, you're going to see a lot of workers have more flexibility as to where they're deciding to live. I've spoken to many friends and businesses alike over the last year who have been telling me that the workers are increasingly no longer required to live in the same city, state, or even country in which their employers are located.
And this whole past year has just shown us, as you say, how prevalent it is, how we can all do it. We've all really kind of figured this out. Stephanie, can you reflect on how the court system has adapted to all this and what changes, if any, you see continuing after the pandemic?
Absolutely. The courts have adapted really well, and I think it's been pretty comforting to see how quickly they shifted to remote proceedings. And I think generally cases have been managed pretty much the same, with the exception of remote hearings, depositions, and mediations. And so, you know, either your case is going to come to a screeching halt when it would have been set for trial, and so there might be delay. We think that's probably going to force more settlements.
And then, Tom, what do you see in the workplace?
Yeah, so Lori, it's not just the courts that are trying to decide whether to come back or to stay at home and be remote or maybe a hybrid type system. I think that's one of the #1 questions for employers right now over the next few months as people get vaccinated. And one employment law specific issue that I think all employers will have is deciding whether their employees' physical presence in the workplace is an essential job function.
Working remotely, maybe a 4-day work week. I mean, these are all big perks. Melanie, what other perks if you will, are younger people looking for in jobs?
Yeah, absolutely. As Gen Z and millennials become a bigger component of our workforce, you're starting to see startup culture become more prevalent. Things like an open workspace design and increased collaboration and even integrating play into the work environment, like ping pong tables or video games or, you know, soft serve machines, etc.
I mean, whether we're talking about bring your pets to work or concert tickets, employers are definitely getting creative.
That would be fun. I could bring my little Labradoodle over here. Yeah, you know, that would be fun to do, always. And I've even heard some buzz recently, Paul, that some younger employees are looking to be paid by Bitcoin or crypto. Could we really get to that?
Yeah, I think that that's that might be a bit more far ways off than some of the benefits Giselle was discussing. But we have heard several employers consider this option.
There are so many changes in the tech world, if you will. I mean, Tom, what other issues come up tech-wise?
I mean, you just go to the grocery store and you see the self-checkout robots. I just see a rise in robotics and automation coming.
There's even been some chatter about artificial intelligence replacing attorneys. And while there are certain AI tools that are useful for attorneys, like document review and research that can help make the attorneys more efficient, the AI is at this point pretty ill-equipped to take on the role of things like litigation. So never fear, your Stearns Weaver attorneys will not be replaced by robots anytime soon.
Good.
But you very may well see employees looking to unionization to try to protect their jobs from robotics and automation.
But in the TV business, unions are almost gone at this point. Do you see unions coming back in some way?
Just recently, Amazon was in the national news because workers at one of its warehouses in Alabama were trying to unionize.
So when it's not union related, maybe something to do with all these social injustices and social issues we're seeing now, can companies still interfere or have policies to limit how much their employees can talk about this in person or on social media?
Sure, Lori, and employers can invoke those rules. And in fact, we're seeing more and more employees wanting to express themselves. They want to carry on these conversations about politics in the workplace and on social media. And although most private employers probably know that employees don't have a constitutional right to free speech in the workplace, employers still have to keep in mind that there's other federal and state laws that do offer workers protections for some speech under certain situations.
And I would think with social media too, it depends if it's your personal account or if it's a work account.
Right.
You get into a whole nother gray area there. And then what does this mean for a private employer?
So for private employers first, employees are subject to the employer's private rules. The First Amendment doesn't offer any protection. So generally speaking, a private employer can discipline an employee for something that person says, as long as the employer is consistent and doesn't discriminate in its decision making regarding the discipline.
On the other hand, as Stephanie says, there's always a but. Social media for employers has also proven to be a very useful evidentiary tool.
Always. The pros and the cons, no doubt. And on the subject of getting caught for not following company policy, let's bring up this other big topic of medical marijuana. I mean, what impact are you seeing there, Giselle?
Well, as most of the employers know, there has been legalization of medical marijuana in Florida for certain conditions. But the issue is that there's still this federal law that you can't really reconcile with the state law, which says that you can't use marijuana. And so employers have had a tough time. You know, my advice is still to have a policy. If you want a drug-free workforce, have a policy and apply it consistently. As of right now, the legislature hasn't been able to really pass any laws in Florida to protect some of these people who need to use medical marijuana.
And tacking onto that, you know, while the Florida has not yet passed a constitutional amendment allowing for recreational marijuana, and the last effort to get it on the ballot failed, that is definitely something we see as a recurring issue. Forecasting to next year's session, it's an election year and they're going to be redistricting, so we don't expect to see a lot of activity, but stay tuned. Tune into next year and you'll see if my forecast holds true.
Melanie, thank you for coming all the way from Tallahassee.
Absolutely.
Down to Miami and Fort Lauderdale, this South Florida studio, and our audience is all over Florida. We know they're so in tune with everything you're talking about. The whole legal landscape is really changing. So thank you all so very, very much for being here today. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lori.
I look forward to seeing everyone again next year in person. Thank you for joining us.
You're doing it. I love it. Oh my gosh, it's great. Look forward to seeing you next year in person.
So, if I can.
Oh no. We'll see you next year.